Welcome back to In Response EDH. As always, I'm your host Albert, and I'm glad you can join us for another great Commander gameplay video. On today's episode, ᴅɪᴜᴜ is back and playing Narset Enlightened Master, in a deck he calls Narset Enlightened Dragster. This is not your average Narset deck, it's a vehicle tribal deck, so it makes a ton of tokens that are used to crew a fleet of big vehicles to run over the competition. He starts off with Storm the Bolt, Forbidden Friendship, Sworn Companions, Prodigy's Prototype, Riverglide Pathway, Henge Pathway, and a Shivan Reef. Also making his return to the channel is Jeff, and he's looking to get another win this season, this time with Feldon of the Third Path. He's looking to play strong creatures with ETB or attack triggers to return to the battlefield from the graveyard with Feldon's ability. He keeps a starting 7 with Spite Bellows, Italy Primal Storm, Gauntlet of Power, Spine Rock Knoll, Forgotten Cave, and 2 mountains. Next we have Jose back, and he's playing Maja, Guard Protector. This is a token deck that packs a big punch. It makes a ton of tokens through landfall and other spells and effects, and plays a lot of cards that grant them buffs to push through big damage. He decides to keep a Roiling Regrowth, Loyal Guardian, Swords to Plowshare, a Rasta of the Endless Web, Branchloft Pathway, and 2 plains. And again, last but not least, there's me, and I'm playing one of my newest decks, led by Pako and Haldan. This deck hits hard by getting Pako out early and exiling the top of everyone's deck to play later with Haldan. I keep an opening 7 with Farseek, Outpost Siege, Wilderness Reclamation, Tide Channel Pathway, a mountain, and 2 forests. Before we get started, we would like to remind you, if you enjoy our content and would like to support the channel, consider becoming a patron. When you do, you're not only contributing to the channel's growth, but you're also being entered in our monthly giveaways, as well as receiving patron-only perks. All proceeds of our Patreon are reinvested back into the channel to bring you the best content possible. We would also like to thank our sponsor, Dragon Shield. Hit the link in the description of this video to check out the best product out there to protect your cardboard. You can also support the channel by using our affiliate link when purchasing product and singles at TCG Player. With that said, and the introductions out of the way, let's start the game. Our Twitch chat chose ᴅɪᴜ to go first, so he starts us off by playing a Shivan Reef, and passes. Draw.
Not like a traditional.
We'll play a forest, tap the forest, and play a Birds of Paradise. Go ahead. After that, Jose draws and plays a Branchloft Pathway, and passes. Jeff then draws and plays a tapped Forgotten Cave. ᴅɪᴜ then draws and plays a Lava Glide Pathway. He then casts a Forbidden Friendship, creating a 1/1 Dino with haste and a 1/1 Human Soldier.
1/1 Human Soldier.
I got a blocker.
Attacking for 1.
I know. I then draw for turn and play a Tide Channel Pathway. I then tap 2 mana to cast Farseek and go searching for a Ketria Triumph. Jose then starts his turn and plays a basic Plains. He then taps it and casts a Soul Warden. Jeff then draws and plays a Spine Rock Knoll. As it enters, he looks at the top 4 cards of his library and exiles one of them under his land to play later. He then puts the rest on the bottom of his library. ᴅɪᴜ then starts his turn playing a Henge Pathway. He then taps out and casts Prodigy's Prototype. After that, he moves to combat and spreads the love by hitting both Jose and Jeff for 1 each. I then untap and draw, then play a basic mountain as my land drop. After that, I tap out and cast my commander, Pako, Arcane Retriever. And as it enters, Jose gains a life. I then move to combat and swing Pako at Jeff. When I do, we all exile the top cards of our libraries, and unfortunately exile a Seedborn Muse. Pako then gets 3+1/+1 counters on it, and Jeff takes 6 commander damage. Jose starts his turn and plays another Plains. He then taps 2 mana to cast Rampant Growth. Jose searches up a forest to the field tapped, and with nothing else, ends his turn. Jeff then plays another mountain and taps out to evoke Spite Bellows. When it dies, he deals 6 damage to Pako, killing it off. Jose remembers to gain a life with his Soul Warden, and then ᴍᴏ starts his turn playing a mountain. He then taps all his mana, taking 1 from the ᴍᴜᴅᴏ, and casts Storm the Bolt. After that, he uses his creatures to crew his prototype, and swings at Jose. Jose doesn't like that decision and exiles it with the Swords of Plowshares. ᴍᴏ gains 3 life and creates a pilot token from its attack trigger. As it enters, Jose gains another life. I untap and draw.
But why mana?
I had a mana open.
He doesn't like to. He doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't waste.
Hey, why'd you attack me? He was open. He was
42.
open.
I also
And you're
got hit
gaining
by
life.
6.
Well, why are you giving me the life?
I didn't.
I play Command Tower, then tap 3 mana to cast my other commander, Haldan, Avid Arcanist. After that, I cast Adventure Awaits from exile to look at the top 5 cards of my library, and can find and reveal a creature card from among them. I find a Guardian Augmenter and put it into my hand. Jose then starts his turn and misses his land drop, but he does cast a Rasta of the Endless Web. As it enters, he gains another life off his Soul Warden. Jeff then draws and plays another mountain as his land drop. He then pays 3 to cast his commander, Feldon of the Third Path. As it enters, Jose gains another life. Turn 5 starts with ᴍᴏ putting a Thriving Heath on the field tapped, and choosing blue as it enters. After that, he casts a Surge Hacker Mech. As it enters, he gets to deal 2 damage to a creature and targets Jose's Soul Warden. With nothing else, he ends his turn. I draw my card and play a Forest as my land drop. After that, I tap 3 mana to cast a Commander Sphere, and follow that up by tapping 3 more for a Guardian Augmenter. Jose then tries to gain a life, but you don't have it anymore.
Someone's cheating.
Jose then starts his turn and puts into play a Field of Ruin. After that, he decides to tap out and play his commander, Maja, Redguard Protector. With nothing else, he passes. Jeff draws his card for turn and plays another mountain. He then puts out a Gauntlet of Power and taps out, doing so. He then ends his turn and passes back to ᴍᴏ. ᴍᴏ then starts his turn, crewing the Surge Hacker Mech, and goes straight to combat, swinging at Jose. Jose chooses not to block and takes 5 damage. This will trigger the Storm the Vault, and ᴍᴏ creates a treasure on his second main phase. He then casts his commander, Narset Enlightened Master. After that, I start my turn and tap out to cast Pako again. I then play an island as my land for turn, and cast an Aqueous Form, enchanting Pako and making him unblockable. After that, I go to combat and swing Pako at ᴍᴏ. We then resolve its trigger and find 3 lands and an Arcane Signet. This will put 4 counters on Pako and make him a 9/9. ᴍᴏ can block it and takes 9 commander damage. I then end my turn. Jose then untaps and draws. He taps 2 mana and casts 3 visits, searching up a Savannah to the field. When the land enters, this triggers Maja, and Jose creates a 1/1 soldier token. Jeff then draws for turn and taps out to cast Siege Gang Commander. When it enters the battlefield, he creates 3 goblins. ᴍᴏ then starts his turn playing a Clifftop Retreat, and then moves straight to combat, swinging Narset at Jeff, who jump blocks it with a goblin.
On attack triggers, exile the top 4 cards. Stay in exile, stay in exile. Oh my god.
ᴍᴏ then casts Padine, Consul of Innovation, and then casts Master's Call for free with Narset, creating 2 1/1 mirror tokens. And Jose makes a spider token with a Rasta. After that, ᴍᴏ casts Inspiring Statuary.
And then I'll pass the turn. I control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 artifacts.
Double damage.
So Storm of the Vault transforms.
I untap and draw, and play a mountain from the exile pile. I then tap 10, since my mountains now tap for 2 each, and cast ᴑɪᴏᴏ the Ceaseless Hunger. As I cast it, I choose to exile Jaime's transformed land and Jose's Arasta. Before I go to combat, Jeff activates Feldon.
This commander set X proof.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm getting rid of it.
Okay.
Pow!
Okay, well that makes my attacks very easy. Alright, we good? I'm trying to keep you awake, because you're falling asleep. I want you to play.
How's the rest of that, man?
Going at Jeffrey, first the attack trigger. That's an island.
Another
Land. Land. Okay, so this just gets exiled.
Oh.
Pako then gets 3 more counters, and Jeff then takes 10 more commander damage. I then remember my scry trigger and choose to leave it on top. On my end step, Jose casts a Roiling Regrowth, sacrificing a plains, and searches up a forest and a plains, creating him 2 more soldiers. Jose then draws for turn and casts a Grow from the Ashes with Kicker, and searches up 2 basics to the field. This will create him 2 more soldiers. He then decides to leave up some mana and passes. Jeff starts his turn and once again activates Feldon to create a token copy of the Spite Bellows in his graveyard. He then deals 6 damage to my Haldan, and we forget it's a dice trigger and not an ETB. He then casts and equips a Lightning Greaves to Feldon, and then lets his Spite Bellow go to the graveyard and passes. Jaime begins his turn and Padim will trigger, except Jeff controls the highest CMC artifact, so he doesn't draw a card.
Narset's gonna swing at Jeffrey. Attack trigger. 1, 2, 3. Where are all the vehicles though? 4.
Jaime whiffs off the attack trigger and only finds a Midnight Haunting, making 2 1/1 spirit tokens. He then ends his turn. I draw for turn and go straight to my combat phase. I choose to send ᴑɪᴏᴏ at Jaime and Pako at Jeff. I trigger the Aqueous Form and Scry. We then all exile the top cards of our libraries, and I hit 3 non-creature cards, which gives Pako 3 more counters. ᴑɪᴏᴏ's attack trigger would then go off, and Jaime has to exile the top 20 cards from his library. We then go to damage, and Jeff gets knocked out with commander damage. And Jaime just chump blocks ᴑɪᴏᴏ. I then tap 5 to recast Haldan, and then shock in a Temple Garden from exile. I then tap 1 mana to cast Jose's Reconnaissance from exile. After that, I tap out to cast Wilderness Reclamation. With the spell on the stack, Jose casts Beast Within, targeting my boy Pako, and I get a 3/3 beast. He then convokes out a March of the Multitudes for 8 to create 5 1/1 soldiers with lifelink. I then go to my end step and untap all my lands with the Reclamation. Jose then draws for turn and taps 5 to cast Loyal Guardian.
I am not long for this world.
You can literally kill him right
you
now.
could probably win. He then moves to combat and puts a 1/1 counter on each of his creatures, since he controls his commander. Jose chooses to all-out swing at me with 12 3/3 creatures. I block what I can and take 30, but only mark 29 because math is hard. And Jose gains 15 life. He then casts an Essence Warden and passes to Jaime. Now that Jeff is out of the game, Jaime controls the highest CMC artifact, and Padim draws him a card. He then draws for turn, crewing up his vehicle and goes to combat, swinging everything at me.
All of this at Albert, and there is a plan behind this. But yeah, I'm saying all that Narset triggers
Why?
on attack.
Because there's a plan
Okay,
apparently.
Start your engines. Dig through time.
Well, there you go.
Memory. But I have to cast them at their thing, but so I have these to cast. But damage is
This is a 5/5?
menace.
Menace. Let me take 5 regardless and I die.
Yes.
Actually, I'm gonna crack this. Draw a card.
I swear to God.
Nope, you got it.
Okay.
On his second main, Jaime casts Time Wipe, bouncing his Narset back to hand and clearing the board. He then casts Tempered Steel, start your engines, which does nothing right now, followed by a dig through time to grab 2 cards from the top 7 cards of his library. Jose then activates his Field of Ruin to destroy Jaime's thriving heath. They both search up a basic to the field untapped. Jaime then taps his last 2 lands to cast Krenko's Command, creating 2 1/1 goblins. After that, Jose starts his turn and recasts his commander. With nothing else, he passes back to Jaime. Jaime then draws for turn and recasts his commander Narset. He then pays 2, cracking his treasure, to cast Ethereum Sculptor. And since it's an artifact, it's a 3/4 with Tempered Steel. Jose then draws for turn and casts Evolution Sage. With no further plays, he just passes back to Jaime. Jaime then starts by playing a Plains and goes to combat, swinging Narset and the Sculptor at Jose, triggering Narset again. He finds Colossal Plow and Release to Memory. Jose then double blocks Narset, and both commanders will die and go back to the command zone. Jaime then casts the Colossal Plow. He then casts the Release to Memory, exiling the 4 creatures in Jose's graveyard, and he creates 4 1/1 spirits. He follows that up by paying 4 mana to cast the Weatherlight. After that, he ends his turn. Jose then draws for turn, and again spends his whole turn to recast his commander. With nothing else, he ends his turn. Jaime then draws and finds the Sun Home Fortress of the Legion to play as his land drop. He then uses all his creatures to crew up the Weatherlight and the Plow. He then moves to combat and swings both of his vehicles at Jose. Jaime gains 3 life from the Plow, and Jose takes 14 damage. The Weatherlight will trigger since it dealt damage, and he looks at the top 5 cards of his library for a Historic spell. He then reveals a Parhelion 2 and puts it into his hand, and casts the Parhelion. Jose then takes his turn and starts it by paying 3 mana to cast Primal Growth. He also pays the kicker cost, sacrificing the Evolution Sage to search up 2 basic lands to the field. Maja will see this and make him 2 more soldier tokens. Jaime then untaps and draws for turn. He then crews up the Parhelion and the Weatherlight and goes to combat. When the Parhelion attacks, it creates 2 4/4 angels with vigilance, attacking Jose as well. Jose has no flyers to block and takes 21 points of damage. On his second main, Jaime taps the Inspiring Statuary to help cast a Hordling Outburst, making another 3 goblin tokens. On his end step, Jose casts Secure the Waste, where X equals 7 to create 7 warrior tokens. After that, he takes his turn and casts Camaraderie to gain 10 life and draw 10 cards, as well as giving all his creatures +1/+1 until end of turn. He then finds and casts a Beastmaster Ascension. After that, he full swings at Jaime, and Jaime blocks enough to stay alive and goes down to 3. Jaime then starts his turn and begins crewing up his vehicles.
Long time ago.
Angel. Crew's Parhelion. Second Angel +2 goblins. Crew Colossal Plow. And then this guy's at 3 power because he's an artifact. Crew Weatherlight. And then combat, I'm just gonna throw everything your way. Create 2 more angels.
Before damage, Jaime activates the Sun Home to give the Colossal Plow double strike. This will deal 37 damage to Jose and knocks him out of the game. Jose then reveals a generous gift that he had in hand, which could have kept him alive, but he didn't have enough mana to cast it. Congratulations to Jaime on getting his first win on the channel. Jaime builds some pretty off-the-wall decks. I mean, have you ever gone up against a Narset's vehicle deck? He typically builds more of the less popular commanders, and each of them plays cards you hardly see, that are themed around fun deck ideas, which is great to play against since you never know what's coming next. Except for maybe his Gerard Rats deck, where he plays nothing but rat colonies. Well, Jeff didn't get to do much this game, since I knocked him out so fast. He did his best to try to keep me from getting out of control by constantly killing my creatures with the Spite Bellows, but that was the reason I focused my attacks on him, since I couldn't afford to keep losing my commanders turn after turn. My Pako and Haldan deck can move pretty quickly and definitely packs a serious punch, but that also paints a big target on my back when it sprints out of the gate like that. It was really unfortunate for me that I didn't find any impactful spells off of Pako's attack triggers to help protect me from the table ganging up on me. Normally I can find some type of counterspell or kill spell from the top of my opponent's library, but this time all I found was lands. I think I could have laid off with Jeff for a bit since he wasn't too much of a threat and started picking on Jose, but Jose was falling asleep at the table and I wanted to keep him awake and playing so he wouldn't pass out on us. So I really don't appreciate him swinging at me for all that damage. But I'll just let my good friend Brian Cranston sum up how I feel about him.
You know, I'll just be honest with you. I don't like him. He thought he can bully everybody and demanded, you know, all kinds of specialty foods. You know, I didn't care for him at all. I thought he was a jerk. And he also had a very distinct pungent body odor to him that was very difficult to work with. It's unbelievable how he would behave like that.
Jose was in top deck mode most of the game. He was able to find and string together some pretty strong spells in the late game, but too bad for him, Ḥaime had just built an army of tokens that pretty much kept him at bay most of the game. Finding that Beastmaster Ascension was really clutch in the last turn, but it just wasn't enough to get around Jaime's defenses this time. That and the lack of blockers for Jaime's flyers is what sealed his fate. If you enjoyed this game, consider stopping by our Twitch streams for Salty Tier Tuesdays every Tuesday at 6 PM Pacific Standard Time, and Fridays at 7 Pacific Standard Time for live Commander action. Make sure to like the video and leave a comment, and if you aren't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Before we go, we'd like to give a big thank you to our amazing patrons. We are glad to have your support and thankful for each and every one of you. We here at In Response would like to thank you for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and make sure you follow us on our social medias. We also stream every Friday night at 7 PM Pacific Standard Time. Thank you for watching. Have an awesome day.